we need fiscal stimulus. We need monetary stimulus. When you shut down the economy, it's going to immediately impact people's jobs. And right now, projections are unemployment claims this week alone over 2 million new ones. Some projections are as much as a 30% reduction in GDP for the second quarter. We need stimulus right now. We need to get by, but we also need to get things going again as soon as possible. And I don't know, I'll wax poetic for a second. It really makes you appreciate the beauty of the market system, that when you shut it down and you see what it stops providing, you can really appreciate how it delivers the goods when it is working. Yeah. So monetary stimulus, what we're talking about, actions from the Federal Reserve. Generally, it takes the form of lowering the Fed funds target rate. Since the Great Recession, that rate has been fairly low. It's risen back a little bit, but not that much. And so we've dropped it back to zero, but from all indications, the reduction in the Fed funds target rate is really not having much of an effect. The bigger effect is the Fed going out and saying it is going to give companies direct liquidity in the markets. Just the Fed is going to give companies money through either asset purchases or loan guarantees. Like that direct liquidity seems to have had the most impact on the monetary side.
And that is companies that already are holding debt, or most companies operate, even if they're in a very strong cash position, they do still borrow, correct?
Yep, they still borrow. Almost every corporation in the U.S. has some form of debt, and so the Fed is offering them loans and loan guarantees, and even to purchase some of the assets they may be holding for cash. As companies learned a lesson in the Great Recession that cash is king, even if you are from the landscaper to all the way up to the multi-billion-dollar international corporation, cash is still king. And so the Fed's doing a lot to provide companies with cash right now.
We'll get back to the landscaper too, actually. But let's go to those checks, or those direct deposits, or those maybe preloaded debit cards. How important is it for Americans to get this kind of a cash infusion right now?
Yeah, it's going to be important because really the economic distress we're seeing is kind of unprecedented in the speed at which it's happened. We've gone from 0 to 60 in a week, and so whatever we can do to help people is going to be good. But you also have to think about what the purpose of this is. Is it, are the checks to help people make ends meet until we can get going again? And if that's the purpose, and we can get the economy going again within a month or so, I think it's going to do a lot of good. But when you look historically at what programs like this have done, for example, the Bush era $300, $600 checks that went out, really didn't have that much of an economic impact. Now, of course, the magnitude's much larger with this one, so we might see it move the needle a little bit more. But I think you can definitely say we're going to have to do something for people who are struggling. So normally the way unemployment compensation works is that you get a fraction of what you were making before. It lasts for 26 weeks. It's different for each state. The state average is about $350, $400 a week. And so the federal government, as of right now, is talking about adding, in addition to what you were getting before, $600. To give it perspective, that's if you were to annualize it, $31,000 annual salary on top of the unemployment benefits you would have already been getting. So that's going to be a massive cash infusion, and it's going to go directly to the people who are drawing unemployment and compensation. And those are the ones who need it the most. So that's, looking at everything right now, I think that's where the biggest impact is going to be in terms of keeping people's heads above water and allowing them to get through this. There are provisions in the bill for, as you mentioned, the gig economy workers. So this is going to be everything from your independent contractor, like the landscaper, to the Uber driver. And so there's going to be provisions in there for them to be able to claim some form of reduced income and be able to get some assistance as well.
Is it easy for small businesses to go under in a scenario like this without a well-crafted rescue plan?
Absolutely. The small businesses are going to be the ones that get hurt the most.
I see it says here $367 billion in loans for small businesses.
Yes.
Do you think that will be more nimble than the standard government loan process?
I hope so. The Trump administration seems to be willing to cut through red tape to get things happening. That's a pretty interesting provision they've included. Each small business can get up to $10 million, and they may even be able to have it forgiven. So it may not even be truly a loan, so long as they don't fire anybody, or so long as they don't lay off any workers. And it's a direct proportion. So if you keep 100% of your workforce, you don't have to pay any of the loan back.
Do you think this was probably worth 5 days of crafting, even though everybody was desperate for a solution, as opposed to what it probably looked like 3 or 4 days ago?
I personally think that the time in the legislative process is going to be manifest in all the tiny little pork barrel deals that were packed in by every congressional representative and senator to get their pet project worked in here. These are just tiny things, like $1 million here and $2 million there, and
in a time like this, you think that some of our august legislators took enough time to figure out what pork barrel?
Absolutely. Complexity and opaqueness breed pork barrel politics. And so, how many of us really are able to read through these entire bills, and if we do it, truly understand what all's in there? Our elected officials in both parties are not above using a crisis as leverage to move forward their political agendas. I think you got to do it. I think you got to help people. I think this is, like you say, hold your nose. It's the best way to get it done. Hopefully, we're able to get the economy going again. I think what we are going to have to reckon with right now is that all of these quarantine measures have carried a lot of benefits in terms of saving lives and flattening the curve. And the benefits are there. We all see them. What we also need to see are the costs. And we are going to start increasingly seeing the costs of this, and they're tremendous. And so we are going to have to approach this problem not from just benefits of quarantine, but the benefits in the context of the costs as well, and find the right balance.
And that's not a real popular thing to say yet, probably.
No, that will not make me very popular.